Hi, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Epoch's webinar series. Today, we're focusing on onboarding best practices as it's been heavily requested across our internal community and from folks joining our webinars regularly. Today, we'll be chatting with Holly, Marques, and Sofia, where they'll be diving into their backgrounds and expertise within the space. But as a quick starting point, welcome to our webinar series. I'm Jade. I'm one of the co-founders of Epoch. And as a quick background of why we host these webinar series is because a lot of our community members and people within employee experience space come to us asking for best practices and trends. So we thought what better way to share those and spotlighting folks that are in it day in, day out. So with that said, today you'll be hearing from Marques. He's currently at DoorDash, and he has been in the space for quite some time across companies like Twilio and now at DoorDash, and he has such a passion for just connecting employees and in the broader employee program space. And then also you'll be hearing from Holly, who's currently at Hatch, and previously she was at DoorDash as well, which is incredible. So her and Marques will have a lot of things to talk about across their experiences as DoorDash was growing. I don't know, Holly's just incredible because she has a great background across not just onboarding, but in terms of just overall people programs at high growing companies and companies like Hatch right now, which is Hatch around like 200 people, 100 people, Holly?
We're getting there. We're getting close. Very close. Yeah.
So different scales of companies, which I think is very relevant for the audience member here. And then also we'll be hearing from Sofia, who's currently at NerdWallet. Sofia's awesome. She came highly recommended from one of our close friends and someone we've worked with who currently is at NerdWallet. So you'll be diving into how Sofia has been seeing the space evolve and best practices within onboarding as well. But with that said, to warm us up, maybe we'll have everyone in the chat kind of describe themselves as how you're feeling today with an emoji. You can drop it in the chat as I share a bit more about topics you'll be hearing from in terms of how do you develop an onboarding timeline, the onboarding journey across different scales of companies, and how do you foster those intimate and meaningful connections for folks who are just joining your company, and much, much more. So with that said, I'll stop sharing my screen and we'll dive into it. To kick things off, we'll have each member of the panel kind of quickly introduce themselves in terms of maybe where you're based and why you're excited for today's conversation, and if you want like a fun fact or something you did over the weekend. With that said, maybe we'll start with you, Holly, and then Sofia, and then Marques.
All right. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here and hang out and have this conversation. So yeah, I got my start with onboarding and employee experience about 10 years ago at DoorDash. When I joined, there were less than 30 employees. So it's grown quite a bit since then. And it was all in-person onboarding, and then kind of helped establish like a very immersive, robust onboarding experience. Transitioned over to WAG and helped out kind of expand and enhance their onboarding. And then went to Dutchy, where it was fully remote, all virtual, and kind of figuring out like, how do we do this and make it really impactful, but all from behind a screen. And so that was like a super fun project to work on and collaborate on. And now I'm at Hatch and partnering with our awesome people ops team to make sure that people get set up for success from day one. And I am in Morgan Hill, California. So it's like Silicon Valley area. And I will hand it over to Marques.
All right, so Holly crawled so I could run at DoorDash. Like, she designed our program and passed it over to me, and I've been, trying to make Holly happy in a sense. But my name is Marques. I'm based out of San Francisco. Don't let the New York cap fool you. I've been at DoorDash for 2.5 years, which feels like forever, but I also feel like a new hire as well. Love all things onboarding. Before joining DoorDash, I worked at Twilio, where I had the time of my life working in employee experience. So now I've just been trying to marry L&D with employee experience and create this robust onboarding experience. And I'm sure I'll be using robust a bunch, so apologies in advance. Passing it over to Sofia.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sophia. I am currently an HR associate at NerdWallet. I've been at NerdWallet for almost 2 years, which is crazy to say. I am based in Southern California, specifically Irvine. So if you're in the SoCal area, shout out. I have about 3 years experience of HR, and I've pretty much been heavily involved in onboarding for all those experiences. Previous to NerdWallet, I was in the property management industry, and I took care of the onboarding in person because I had to come into the office. But NerdWallet, I'm completely remote, so I've been taking care of the onboarding and orientation fully from my home. And so I'm excited to share about onboarding best practices and hear about best practices from my fellow colleagues here.
Amazing. To start things off, just so that the audience has an understanding of where you all are coming from when you talk about onboarding and structure of your company. So just 3 broad questions. What does your company look like right now? Are you hybrid, in-person, remote? Who owns onboarding at your company? And then real quick, like, what is the structure of onboarding? That's a broader one, but maybe like Marques, we'll start with you.
Yeah, happy to kick it off. So at DoorDash, we're about 12,000 employees, and we are a combination of virtual, fully remote. The majority of our company is going to be hybrid. And then we also have in person as well, because we have our support team. And so it's really about designing something that works for all 3 audiences that we have. And then in terms of onboarding, like who owns it, I see it as like we all own it, right? So onboarding, especially as we get into the webinar later, it's like a 90-day experience that's joined by our employee experience team, which I'm on, and the new hires manager. And so the way I like to think about it is like we're responsible for the company level onboarding. So introducing them to our culture, company-wide programs that we have, benefits, perks, etc. And so that's going to be done through day 1 orientation and a number of other company-wide events that we have. And then the direct manager's role is just really that team level onboarding, introducing them to norms, role expectations, partners, org specific systems, and all those things under the sun.
Amazing. Thank you, Marques. Maybe over to you, Sophia.
Yeah. So NerdWallet is about 730 employees, and NerdWallet is a remote first company. So NerdWallet will optimize for nerds to work how and where they can be their most productive. So a big chunk of NerdWallet is remote, but we do also have in-office employees as well. For onboarding at NerdWallet, orientation happens within the first 2 days. We try to get as much information to new hires as possible. Essential information like benefits, new hire paperwork, their workstation setup, an office tour if they're in office. And then onboarding generally runs through the new hires first week. And then we check in throughout their key milestones like 30, 60, 90 days. And who's involved in onboarding at NerdWallet? Well, it's HR, of course, IT, talent, or recruiting, the L&D team, workplace ops, especially if they are in office, and then managers, of course, play a huge role in onboarding. So it's important to make sure that, there's opportunities for teams to be involved and that they understand their role in onboarding our nerds.
And just similar to Sophia, we have kind of like multiple parties involved. So Hatch is a sleep wellness company. We make really beautiful devices and content to help folks get better rest and rise. And we are fully remote. So folks scattered all across the country. And we've got our people ops team and our talent acquisition team that really work closely with that pre-onboarding, right? Just making sure people understand what to expect, that they know how excited we are to have them join. And then we kind of do this drip campaign with our orientation. So kind of spacing out some of our sessions, making sure people get that warm welcome. My colleague Jasmine, when she did my orientation, one of the first things she says is, "Hey, I'm a helper. I identify as a helper and I'm here to help you." And I love that. My heart fluttered when she said that. And I just think that is so important, especially in a remote world, that folks know, I can ask questions. I can be curious. You don't have the visibility of being in office and being able to tap someone on the shoulder. So just making sure you establish that like orientation, warm welcome. I'm here to help you, get you set up for success. And then we sort of pace out some sessions with our values, right? Getting people the chance to meet our co-founders and hearing our values. What's our mission? What's our vision? What are we doing here at the business? And then we also have our HR business partners, myself, we check in with team members and managers, right? Like, how's this person doing? Are they equipped? Do they have the resources they need? Do they have lots of questions? Are they feeling like really set up? So that's kind of the scope of our onboarding and orientation at Hatch.
And maybe kind of in the same vein of what you talked about, Holly, of how it felt really great being welcomed by someone and having that support as soon as you start. Like, I guess, like, how do you all leverage like peer support or mentorship and apply that into orientation or onboarding to help new hires like really acclimate? Maybe Marques, we'll start with you. I know you mentioned previously in our prep call, like 10 Friends Initiative or new hire connection programs.
Absolutely. And I think before going into that, I know we've talked about new hire orientation and onboarding,
Oh,
but
yes,
those
and
two
the
things,
difference of the two.
yeah. And just so for like the people who are interested in getting into this space, because I know I've been to a lot of webinars and I'm like, what are they even talking about? But like, think of new hire orientation as like a one-time welcome event that introduces them to like your culture, your business, getting their computer set up. And so we do all of those during day one orientation, in addition to having like a AMA with a member of our leadership team. So like really impactful first day. So it's just introducing them to your company and really trying to get them to fall in love. The onboarding, where I think these two things become interchangeable, is like onboarding is multiple events. So like a series of events, which will even include new hire orientation. That'll help your new hire, be productive as quickly as possible. So I hope that bit of framework helps out a bit. So to answer your question, Jade, in terms of like building connection, what we've recently done is we've started building it during the pre-boarding process. So as soon as the new hire is hired, they receive this welcome letter from their manager, from what we call their 10 friends. So as a part of the ramp, the manager selects 10 people that they want them to be friends with. It could be cross-functional partners, direct teammates. I love that the manager is one of them. So the manager's like, I'm going to be your friend. And so they receive a card from day one. And as a new hire, it just makes you feel so good that like these people are excited to have you there. So it's people from your interview panel, people that you could look forward to meeting in the future. And so now, as they're progressing through their onboarding journey, they're starting to have one-on-ones with the people who have sent these nice letters. They're starting to build those rapport. They're meeting over Zoom, meeting for coffee. And so that's how they're able to build those direct relationships with their teammates. And then also as a part of onboarding, since our day one orientation is virtual, is we have our new hire connections program where new hires will sign up and we connect them to new hires who started within their first 3 months. So you get to meet 2 new hires who are in your location. And I also try to get them 1 new hire who's starting in that same business unit so they can kind of go through it together. You have someone to ask questions with, you have a safe space, because as we know, once you have friends at work, work is that much better.
That is so sweet, Marques. Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess, Sophia or Holly, do you have any insights on how you all do that, or do you have similar programs to really acclimate new hires and get them new friends essentially?
Yeah. So for us, we have a new hire onboarding buddy, and we use the donut integration on Slack, which is really handy for like sharing updates and keeping people updated and also assigning that buddy. So it tags them, reminds the individual like, hey, make sure you meet with this person. We also think, again, we're smaller, right? So 10 buddies, 10 friends would be like a good chunk of our company, which is great. But what we do, so we introduce them, we have a welcome Slack channel, and we introduce them to everyone at the organization. The manager makes that introduction, shares a little bit about them, and then we all get to chime in and welcome them. And we have folks introduced during, we have a weekly company scrum, which I love. And so we have folks introduce themselves and get a chance to come off mic. And that's another way to just make sure everyone at the organization knows who this person is, what they're doing at the company, and a little bit about them personally, so we can DM them on Slack and set up time with them.
Yeah, similarly, there is a new hire Slack channel that we use to spam new hires with welcome messages and all the things. like Marques and Holly mentioned, an onboarding buddy, the 10 Friends initiatives is super helpful in, making sure new hires feel super supported and welcome since day one, even before day one. So just having that at least one team member who can really educate them about, day-to-day processes, share materials and resources, and really bridge social connections. I think just having that one buddy, right, to rely on and lean on, can really help with, again, making the new hire feel supported and, okay, like, I know I have a lot of people to reach out to, but at least I have this person to help with that, Yeah.
I guess, Sophia, there was a question that came in, and I think, yeah, just a quick one. How do you know when a new hire gets moved out of the Slack channel?
It's typically, well, I mean, depending on, how your onboarding runs, but for NerdWallet, it's at the end of the new hires first week. So we make sure that during the first week is where we can answer questions. If they have any, send them reminders about their onboarding tasks, things like that. So typically at the end of the first week, and then usually we'll also, let them know that they have other channels to reach us, email us, Slack us, even though there's no Slack channel anymore. But there are different avenues that they can reach out to us if they need.
And kind of in a similar vein, like all of you sound like you have like either remote first or like hybrid companies. So I know building that sense of cohesion is tough. So have there been like creative onboarding activities or rituals you've seen in your past that allow for new hires to feel that connection to the company or brand upon joining? Maybe Marques, we'll start with you.
Yeah, there's a couple. So at Twilio, I'll start off with Twilio. Sorry, DoorDash, but Twilio just knocked us out the park. So when I worked at Twilio, it was in person and all new hires. So I guess for a bit of context, because context is always important. So Twilio, what they do is they build apps. So they build like the API. So you're able to communicate with the person who like built the app. And hopefully I described that right. So as a part of your onboarding, it was a 2-day experience. And so what we did was we learned how to build the app. And then day 2, we presented to everyone. And so for me, I had a coin flip app. So it was very basic, but I got to present it to everyone. And I got this huge track jacket. It fits nobody. Like I just doesn't think it fits humans. But it's like this big, ugly red track jacket, but it's such like a ritual at Twilio that at the big company events, everybody will wear them. It was really a great way to build connection because people would always ask you like, what app did you build? And so it just automatically started conversations. At DoorDash, what I love is we have our WeDash program. And so the WeDash program was one of the things that like drew me to DoorDash because I've always been like customer obsessed and like wanting to learn more about our customers and how we do the things that we do. And so as part of onboarding, like new hires will go through the WeDash program. And what they would do with the WeDash program is they would step in the shoes of a dasher. So what they would do is like log into the DoorDash app, they pick up the order from the merchant and deliver it to the consumer. And so it's like such a great experience. It's always been a part of our culture at DoorDash and just something that we're trying to bring to new hires. We also have like a WeDash meetups. So you can do it solo if you wish, but we try to have people do pair dashes or group dashes as much as possible. You get to meet people throughout the company and it is very well received. So those are 2 rituals that I've seen that I've really been in love with.
Yeah, adding on to that. So, company swag, welcome kit, even a team lunch, in-person or virtual coffee dates. At NerdWallet, we have this thing called a new nerd social hour. So that's just a chunk of time where it's really informal, casual. We're just playing virtual games, virtual activities on this platform we use. And it's just a way to help new hires bond with their new hire class cohort. And so that is, really fun. Me and one other facilitator is facilitating the games and playing music in the background. So it's really just, time to just decompress and just have fun at the end of onboarding and orientation. But another thing is Leadership Corner is what we call it, where it's really one-on-one FaceTime with an executive. So that could be like a CEO, CFO, CBO, really just that time, a chunk of time, maybe 30 minutes where the exec can really be there and talk about, what they're excited about, why, just a welcome from the CEO or whoever, and to talk about, and the company's mission, vision, and values. And so incorporating that employer brand in the onboarding process as well can help with creating this positive, consistent experience for new hires.
+1 on that, Sophia. Yeah, I think it's so important, especially like at Dutchie, we had pretty large onboarding classes that were fully remote. And so we carved out time during orientation to get to know one another. We like purposely asked questions so that we could kind of find out who they are beyond the screen, beyond their role at the company, have a little fun. We like would do this scavenger hunt, right? And I just think getting people to move around is really important, and just talk to each other and connect on a personal level. And then, similarly at Hatch, we think it's so important. And I think at any organization, really, if you don't have your new hires getting FaceTime with your leaders, your executives, your founders, like that's really critical, even if it's once a month, right? Like make sure that you bake that in so that they kind of make eye contact and get to ask questions and really get that inspiration of like, what are we doing here? And why does this matter? And how do you play a part in this, right? So we have that at Hatch, right? We've got an opportunity to sit down and talk about our values, what is our vision, and where we're going. And that's something I think is just a really critical component of any onboarding and orientation experience at an organization.
Yeah, I know Sophia and Holly, you both mentioned leaders get involved. So I'm curious in terms of for you all, like, how have you been able to get that leadership buy-in or like get them involved? Or what does cross collaboration look like across onboarding between other teams that should be involved within onboarding?
Well, I'm grateful that our leaders love new team members joining, so I don't have to do like a lot of, arm twisting, what have you. It's just kind of getting it on the calendar, right? Like making sure we find out a time that works for them and being flexible. Like we're a startup, things will change, right? And so I think it's really important in any sort of orientation program that you bake flexibility into things and just like, okay, well, if that time doesn't work, we'll switch it up, right? But like, we're going to make this happen. And also, we may talk about this a little bit later, but collecting feedback from new hires so that we have data, right? Like data, this is DoorDash, like data wins arguments. Like that's something I learned early on in my DoorDash career. And so being able to say, hey, here's the feedback that we're hearing. People love this time with you. And it means a lot to them, and getting to see those direct quotes, right? The qualitative data as well. So I think that's critical. You're not just saying like, it's great, but being able to say, hey, like here are the scores, here are the ratings, and people really value this. So like, let's keep this built into the program.
Our leadership team does so great at DoorDash. Everyone from like our CEO, we have Rajat, who's like our VP of product, and he's like our unofficial sponsor for onboarding. He comes in like every Monday, and he's just so passionate about the company, and he does a good job. So our day one orientation is very long. It's like 6 hours, and he does a really good job at the end of the day, just kind of putting everything they learn together and just getting people excited. So our leadership team is so great, and I think they do a good job of being transparent. So when we have our AMAs, they answer some questions where I thought we might have skipped, but they're like, no, we're answering everything. And I think for new hires, it really builds that connection with the company very quick. And then just in terms of in-person events, one of the things that I would say to you all, like if there's one thing to take away from today is like, just learn your customer. Like first identify who your customers are, and then just really laser focus on the needs of your customer group. Because I know at DoorDash, for our customers, what brings people to the office is our leadership team. So any opportunities that I have to have like an AMA or a fun activity involving leadership is a great way to also get the business involved. And like new hires appreciate it, the business appreciates it. And I think it's normally a good experience for all.
Okay. I guess, yeah, Sophia, did you have anything to speak to in terms of, getting leadership involved or collaborating with different teams and onboarding?
It is pretty much similar to what Holly and Marques said. Having leadership be a part of the onboarding or orientation experience can really enhance that experience for new hires and make them feel even more welcome and supported and motivated, right? I feel like there's this belief that like execs are so far out of reach, they can't make the time to meet us, every single employee. But I think if you can really incorporate that into onboarding, I think that really takes it up a notch, because it can really help them understand the company's mission and vision, where we're at and where we're going. And so that time with the exec is really like really meaningful. And again, what Holly said about backing that up with data, right? Like, hey, this is what we're seeing new hires really like. They like this face-to-face time with you. And so if you could try to make time for that, it could be once a month, a quarterly thing, just some time with them, or just backing up with that data is really helpful and shows that, hey, this is really working, and we should continue it.
And I guess with that, I know we kind of alluded to it, but getting feedback from employees and collecting data, it sounds like unanimously, like we all agree it's important to track that. But how do you all approach that? What questions are you asking? Are you doing roundtables, surveys? And then how do you share it back with folks? Like, who needs to see that data?
So we use Lattice, which is great. And we have custom built surveys there. So that's really helpful, right? You can just sort of automate it. It sends it out to our new hires to collect tried and true questions related to the onboarding experience. So that's one aspect of it, just sort of sending the survey. And then something that I love that Hatch does is after 30 days, we have a team member, our HR generalist, sits down and meets live with the individual to check in and say, hey, let's talk about your experience. And we have sort of this spreadsheet that we track where we ask the questions, we keep all the information there. There are some ratings, and then there's just sort of like open feedback that we ask. So we get that face-to-face to really pick up on some of the nonverbals, like let them ask some questions that may not have been captured on the survey. And simultaneously, our HR business partners meet with the manager after 30 days as well. So it's kind of this dual check-in on both ends of the spectrum to make sure that that individual has what they need, that they're equipped, that we're taking care of them. And if not, like, how do we course correct? What do we need to do differently? So that's how we capture it at Hatch.
Yeah, for NerdWallet, we use Culture Amp, and so these are sent at key milestones, so 7-day, 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, and you can include free text questions as well as like rating or multiple choice questions to kind of gauge how the new hire is feeling and what their thoughts are on orientation and onboarding. So it could be what part of orientation could be improved, what's one thing that we could have done differently, and then for like multiple choice questions or rating questions, like I feel like I belong here. I was provided with the, enough information, resources, and tools to assist me in, becoming successful in my new role, things like that. And then, so taking that, feedback and reviewing that data on a set cadence, whether it be monthly or quarterly, and then sharing those findings with the onboarding team, and then making those changes as needed to reiterate.
Yeah, and just to add on, because both spot on, love what you both said. And I think the beauty about onboarding is that there's always new hires coming through. So every week is different. And so for me, I'm always trying things. Sometimes the things suck. Like I've done some ideas that like aren't good at all, but then I've had some ideas that are like home runs. And so part of knowing like what's your home runs and what's your strikeouts is by collecting data. And I collect a lot of data. So day one, we have like the questions are tailored more towards like the day one experience and pre-boarding. So we want to know like, did you receive your laptop on time? Did your manager, did you have the opportunity to connect with your manager before you started? In terms of day one, really there's content focused questions. So questions about like, how did the different segments that we have landed with you? And so we kind of get information about day one that way. One of the things that I incorporated, which started off as a strikeout, but turned out to be a home run, and I saw it in the chat, which reminded me of it, is Kahoot. If you do not have Kahoot, leverage Kahoot. It's such a game changer, because what I like about Kahoot is you can survey people and they can give you like how they felt about something. But one of the cool things about Kahoot is it can actually tell you the percentage of people that got it right. So I can go to leadership and I can say, hey, leaders, our new, like, 95% of new hires have said on a survey that they know our DoorDash history. Or I can say, the question that we ask in day one is, before officially incorporating as DoorDash, we operated under which company's name? And I can tell them that 97% of the people answered that question correct. So it's like still getting to the same thing, but like the storytelling on it is different. And Kahoot allows for storytelling because you can actually test what you're facilitating. And then you can also, and like things that the group doesn't get right, I'll just spend a little bit more time with it. But it has like the engagement aspects that keep people's attention, which we know can be difficult over Zoom. And you actually get to use that data. After we transition out of day one, Day 30 is another touch point. We have some fun courses that we created, which really teach them how to be an operator. So like being an operator at DoorDash is super important. And so similar to day one, we use Kahoot as much as possible to tell the story through data. And then we have people that'll report quantitative and qualitative data. We try to keep the survey as short as possible. I believe that the survey is like 5 questions, but it's just really getting to the heart of like how they experienced it. And some of those questions are the same from day one. So now I can see like the day 1 responses to the day 30 responses to now once we have our big day 90 survey, which is like our main pillar of like how we report out data. And that's like our metric for success. It's a little bit more robust. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete, but we pull a lot of data from there. And then we tie that with our big company survey that we have, which is our Engage Me As survey. Happens on a quarterly basis, but like the real big one is once a year. And so we get the opportunity to compare data, and it's really comparing apples to apples at that point, just because there's so much data to collect on the new hire journey. And so, I'm able to speak to it at that point.
Yeah, and just a few more questions for you all, but I think one top of mind thing for a lot of folks is like, how do you keep onboarding throughout the employee's life cycle? Because like those data points on like the history of a company, like I think often folks will forget after like year 2 or 3 or even like at 100 days. So how do y'all think about that?
Yeah, I think some elements to include could be, conducting regular check-ins, scheduling training sessions, assign an onboarding buddy. And it doesn't have to be, during that new hire's first week. It could be, throughout the employee's journey at the company to really just help answer questions, get them familiar with the processes and their role, and making, essential information easily accessible so that they can refer back to it when needed. It's not, just here's the information during onboarding, but then it kind of gets lost, throughout their life cycle. So just making sure, they have a point of reference to go back to, in terms of benefits or, things like that. So yeah, onboarding is a process that really involves continuous learning and development. So it is really a process to help the new hire fully integrate and become a successful, productive employee.
And maybe following that question, oh, sorry, Holly, maybe you can take this one as well. Just like how you all think about the content itself as well. Like how regularly does it get refreshed and who owns that? But yeah, Holly, over to you.
Yeah, I think that if you're doing orientation right, it's constantly changing. I think that it's not a set it and forget it. It should never be that way. And I think, Marques alluded to this too. You also have to adapt to the group in front of you, right? I mean, there's something you might have built, an remote orientation for 15 people, and maybe you have 2 people in the room. So you've got to pivot, and how do you keep it engaging for 2 people and change the content? So you kind of always have to be ready, improvise, and cater it to your group and the folks in the room and to what's going on in the business, right? So making tweaks and adjustments regularly is my strong recommendation. And then to make sure that everyone's included, Sofia said this, but make sure information is accessible. So we use a Notion, we call it the Nest, very Hatch, very cute. So we use Notion pages, and I think having content accessible there is really key so that everyone understands, like, what is the new hire onboarding experience? What does that look like? As Sofia mentioned, invite folks to be new hire onboarding buddies so that they can pair with folks and sort of empathize with like, oh, this is what it's like when you walk in and you don't know a single soul and it's a remote world, and how do we adjust to that? And then similarly, we have a company calendar, and we keep all of our sessions visible, and they're open to everyone. So we've had people drop into the value session with our co-founders, right? Like if you want that refresh, we encourage it. Come in, hang out with the new hires, listen to the questions that they're asking. New hires ask amazing questions. And I think it's so great for those of us who are veterans at the company to be exposed to that and hear it and kind of tap into that curiosity. So make sure you set up some space for that as well. But those are some of the tips that we use.
These are some expert tips that they're giving, Jay. They are dropping jewels.
Yeah.
So to add on to both, because I think both very good points. And so what we do at DoorDash is we leverage Slack as much as possible. So I will tell you, I have the attention span of like a 6-year-old, maybe like 6.5 on a good day. So what we did was we created a full 90-day onboarding journey. And through Slack, I walked them through step by step. So each day, and I'm trying to figure out a way to automate it. I haven't yet. But each, I would say at a minimum once a week. So every Monday, there's a notification that comes to the group on the Slack channel that gives them an update. And those updates can be hey, we've assigned a course in the learning management system that we have at the company. Click this link to go to the LMS to take these 4 courses. It'll be, don't forget to complete, like, don't forget to enroll in benefits because you have a 30-day window. And so we strategically have these small communication pieces that go to new hires in like a non-overwhelming way that just reminds them of stuff. Because after day one, like, orientation was really good. And I remember feeling like this is a great orientation. Like, I love the company, but I remember like 10% of stuff. And so just being able to piecemeal it over 90 days. And we also have a 90-day new hire checklist. So everyone learns different. And that checklist mirrors the communication that we send. So it's like new hires are going through this journey, which is really important. They're checking things off along the way. They're getting constant reminders about the important things. And that's one of the ways we help make their onboarding experience as seamless as possible, just because there's so much to remember, so many people to remember, and just making it as easy as possible for them goes a long way.
Amazing. And then with that, I have 2 more questions for you all. It kind of ties into the Q&A as well. And then maybe we'll wrap up, Marques, with like the onboarding journey, just so that everyone can have a visual on how certain companies might approach it as well. But with that said, there's 2 questions in the Q&A that's kind of relevant. And it was one of the questions that we talked about as well in terms of different technologies that you all use. I think you all kind of sprinkled some in during a conversation, from like Lattice, Culture M to Notion, even Slack. But are there any other softwares that you all recommend to really connect folks during onboarding?
I will say, especially in a remote world, and I am not sponsored by them, I'm obsessed with Loom. You can use Loom to record videos, and you can share your screen. And, it's just, I think it's so nice, again, when you don't have the opportunity to be in front of someone in person, just to record a quick warm welcome to someone, right? Record some of the sessions, add them to your company wiki so that people can see like, what are the values, right? And kind of get exposed to that. But yeah, Loom is a great tool in addition to the others that we shared. And we are a very Slack forward company. That's pretty much exclusively how we communicate with one another. So again, dropping a little video in there, using the donut integration to automate some of those reminders, I think is super helpful.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think one platform that could be helpful is one that you could create an onboarding like learning path, right? Like an interactive onboarding learning path, especially, and this ties into that one Q&A question we have, especially if you want to have a mix of live and asynchronous elements in onboarding, right? So having a platform where you can have like a one-stop shop for all onboarding resources, where an employee or new hire can refer back to whenever they need it. That way they can self-pace their learning. It's not like hours and hours on Zoom. Having that Zoom fatigue can really diminish that experience for new hires. So if you have a good mix of these 2 sessions of async and live face-to-face connection, it can really help. And so having a platform like Udemy, where you can create a learning path where it's like, okay, week 1, this is what you're focused on. Week 2, this is what you're focused on. And then, so forth.
All great things as always. And so just in terms of the connection part, because I've been working on that a lot more the past few months, I just want to drop in the chat. This is my Candor profile, and Candor is so cool at connecting employees. So it's a free software to use, and it takes like only a few minutes to actually create your profile. And so what you do is basically answer questions about yourself. And I think it's a great way to build relationships with people, because everyone has different ways of working. And getting to know someone not just inside of work, but like outside of work has value. So now when I'm working with new people, I'll share this. And we're also working at incorporating this in the day 1 orientation, where like new hires, they'll answer like 5 or 6 questions, because it can take a while, like if you choose to. Answer 5 to 6 questions, go to a small breakout group, get to share with the other group members. And then in our bigger group, we'll talk about it, and whoever wants to share, excuse me, they could share as well. But it's free, and which we love free stuff. And I think it's just a great visual of just different experiences. And that's a great way to connect people. And then the other way is like some stuff is like free out there, like Google Forms, just using Google Forms to match people. Like that's how we match people for our program. So everything doesn't have to be like super polished, and it could still be effective. So like, look at the resources that y'all have at the company and just figure out like, how can you maximize them? Because there's a lot of stuff in front of you, because companies don't like to pay for new stuff.
And with that, I think a great last question, because it's a quick and easy one before I'll share my screen, is how do you all effectively communicate with new hires without like overly bombarding them with too much content and info? I think we kind of alluded to it, but not sure if you all had any best practices here.
I think, you know, one, it's giving them a heads up about what to expect, right? Before they even start, I think is so critical. Like, be very detailed. Like, here's what's going to come at you. Here's what you're going to see. Here's when we're going to meet. Here's how to reach out to us, and, pace them, right? Like, don't information overload. And one thing that we didn't necessarily touch on, but I think especially in a remote world, build in breaks, right? Like, be very conscientious about, especially if you have like a 6-hour orientation. Like, I know Marques has breaks built into that, right? Like, you need some time off screen, and recognize like people need to stop smiling, right? If you're so excited, it's your first day, like, give people some time. I think that's super important. And just, drip campaign with your information and your resources, and like pace them, like using an LMS, as Sofia mentioned. So they're not just expected to learn everything in 2 days, but there's a little bit of time to kind of process and check in a little bit along the way.
Yeah, Holly, I love that you mentioned to really make in those breaks during orientation or whenever. It's really it really forces those new hires to really just take a break and take a breather, go refill your coffee or take a walk, in between it. And it helps to really retain information if you take a break. So that helps. But again, combining live sessions with asynchronous sessions can really elevate the experience. This could look like, a new hire hub on your company intranet, right? You can have onboarding decks there, links to pages on the company intranet, so that they have the ability to revisit that content at any time, and it's scalable too, right? So, recording videos sessions of orientation instead of having it live, just, brainstorming and thinking of ways to be creative and helping new hires obtain that information, but in a digestible way and way that they can manage on their own.
Yeah. And then I think both spot on. Also, I would just say gamify as much as possible. I know for me, I learn a lot through making mistakes. And so being able to apply those lessons that you're teaching is a great way to get people to remember things. And just also don't be afraid to repeat it. So like repeating it in different avenues. And that's what we do. We provide them the initial introduction and orientation. And then throughout their next 90 days, we're just continuing to share that information in like smaller digestible pieces. Um, so yeah, I try to think day one orientation is like the YouTube video. Post throughout their 90 days, we're more TikTok style. So smaller digestible bites, which just kind of reminds them of what they learned in orientation, and that repetition and them starting to see it in action just becomes ingrained in our culture.
Amazing. Well, with that wraps up most of our questions today. If you, the audience, have anything as well, feel free to drop it in the chat or put in the Q&A. But one thing we'll wrap up with is I really like this visual that Marques had, just to kind of summarize everything we talked about in terms of what a new hire orientation could look like. I'm not sure if, Marques, you want to speak to this, or anyone else for the new hire onboarding journey that's just one.
Yeah. So I created this last year. Our previous before this, our day one, our onboarding experience was really focused on day one. So they would have a day one new hire orientation, and that was really the end of it. And so we saw this opportunity, as I was mentioning, to just kind of piecemeal some of these important things and just making sure new hire orientation wasn't an 8-hour experience and we could pare it down 6 hours. And so from there, this just gives new hires a visual of what to anticipate over their next 90 days. And knowing that they have like me as their best friend 90 days and beyond if we hit it off. But throughout their first 90 days, I'll be there with them, walking them all the way through. And so day one is like new hire orientation. After it, we'll assign their asynchronous courses. Within the async courses, they have about 90 days, 30, 60, or 90 to complete the courses, depending on importance. Day 3, we meet up with them again where we go over our benefits. And part of that is just due to when they have access. And so we even have like different engagement activities. So like meeting their buddies in office for lunch. DoorDash 102 and 103 is just introducing them to our operator culture, how goal setting happens at the company. What is being a DRI, a directly responsible individual? So what does like owning a project look like? And then we prepare them for their 90-day check-in that they'll have with their manager. So I know within like the screen, it looks like a lot, but once we actually like break it down to the new hire, they see that it's not that much over 90 days. And so it's like you have that investment from them. And even more so, which is important, is the investment from the manager, because it's like we're one aspect of it, but the manager is also helps bring this to life. Like they're encouraging them, asking them if they have attended DoorDash 102 and 3. If they did attend, did they have any questions that they could fill in? Because as we all know, like, or I shouldn't say we all know, in my case, new hire orientation, we have all corporate new hires from like all different locations and from all parts of the business. And everyone's onboarding isn't the same. So it's like the day one is the same, but like the way their teams onboard them on systems, norms, and some of those things will look different. But just letting them know, like, this is what you can anticipate. So as we're handing them off to day two, they're in day two and like subsequent weeks that they know what to expect. And not only do they receive it here day one, but throughout their 90 days, they have this stuff on the checklist to make sure they're keeping in line with what to do. And then in Slack, we're also reminding them.
Awesome. Super helpful, Marques, especially as it like I think just wraps up our conversation nicely in a visual way. But I guess like with that, everyone, that wraps up our webinar today. Holly, Marques, Sofia, any parting words or tips for the audience?
I think really just customize to your team, right? Like what is sticky and makes the most sense for your team? How can you take your team, your company's services or products and get people immersed in that and make sure they understand the business and that they really feel connected to the vision and mission from day one and get them really inspired. And it could look different, right? Like every company I've gone to, orientation looks a bit different, and what we expose them to and, give them activities, et cetera. Like it looks a little different. So just customize, but also share ideas, right? Like I learned a lot, both from Marques and Sofia today. So thank you too. Yeah. Be open to new ideas, iterate, iterate, iterate.
100% agree with Holly. Yeah, don't be afraid to be creative. Like, I'm sure you all are very creative people. And one of the cool things about onboarding, as I mentioned earlier, is like each week you'll have new people coming through, or bi-weekly, whatever your cadence is. So like, don't be afraid to try things. Like if something doesn't stick, then like don't do it again. But if there's something that you do that goes over really well, continue to do that. And once you start to have enough things that go over really well, then you're going to be like, I created this amazing program. So don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Make sure you're staying connected to cross-functional partners, managers, leadership team, and keeping them involved. One of the ways to do that, which I've done this past year, is like just having an end of year recap. So just letting them, just guiding people through the journey. Like how many new hires you had, what were some of the highlights of it? If you had any in-person events, share pictures, and just bring people along on that journey. It's a great way to get buy-in.
Yeah, plus one to that. And really quickly, I would also say try to incorporate your employer branding. I think that really helps the new hire and employees connect to the company and their role as well. And it helps, align with the company's mission and vision and values. So if that's something to be creative with, I would say it would be that.
Amazing. With that, I know we had a few questions come in, but or like one more, but we will answer that offline maybe because we are hitting time. And I appreciate everyone joining us in our conversation today. I'll quickly share my screen for us to wrap up. And as I do that, I guess, Holly, Marques, Sofia, how can everyone contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Find me, connect with me. I love to meet new people and share ideas. So please, let's connect on LinkedIn.
Same, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
I've been on a LinkedIn break for a while, but I should be back soon.
Amazing. We'll share everyone's contact information and takeaways shortly after. And if you all want more conversations like this, we are hosting our Epoch Connect conference next month, where we'll be talking across people's programs, onboarding, DEI, and much more. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you so much, Holly, Sofia, and Marques for sharing so many incredible insights with our audience today. Thank you for joining.